Imagine this. A man at the height of success, leading a group of powerful investors worth billions, on the verge of sealing the biggest deal of his life. But in the next minute, one phone call would force him to face a painful choice he had made long ago. The day he chose money over love, power over being a father, and status over the woman who was expecting his child. The glass-walled conference room on the 47th floor of Mallister Tower sparkled like a shrine to wealth. Reed Mallister, 40 years old and richer than many small countries, sat at the head of a table surrounded by 12 of Manhattan's most influential investors who listened eagerly to him. The merger with a tech company from Singapore, displayed in front of him, would secure his status as the most important businessman on the East Coast. "Gentlemen," Reed's voice radiated the confidence of a man who had never lost a deal. "This acquisition will change cloud computing on 3 continents. We're not just buying a company, we're buying the future." Heads nodded in agreement. Figures flashed across the screens, promising billions in revenue and long-lasting market control. Reed felt that familiar thrill of success, the certainty that came from having complete control over his life. Yet somewhere inside, he felt unsettled. Maybe it was the empty penthouse waiting for him at night, where his 6-year-old son, Elias, would be asleep under the care of a series of nannies who could do their job well, but offered no real affection. He shook off the thought. This was his life, well organized and free of the messy emotions that could trap other men. But then his phone buzzed. Expecting a business call, Reed was shocked to see the message. Riverside Elementary School. Emergency. "Excuse me for a moment," Reed said to the investors as he stepped towards the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's busy streets. "Mr. Mallister," came the voice of Mrs. Chen, Elias' teacher, her calm demeanor unable to conceal her worry. "There's been an accident during recess. Elias fell from the playground equipment and hurt his head. The paramedics are taking him to the hospital now." Reed's world shifted. "How serious is it?" he asked, panic rising. "He was unconscious for a few minutes. You need to get to the hospital right away." The phone slipped from Reed's grip, falling to the marble floor, shattering his calm. Outside, the city sprawled beneath him, a kingdom built through grit and calculated risks. But all that faded into insignificance when faced with the thought of his child lying in an ambulance. Turning back to the investors, he saw the dawning awareness on their faces. "Gentlemen, we need to postpone this meeting." "Postpone?" Gerald Hartman, his lead counsel, looked confused. "The Singapore team leaves tonight. If we don't close this today." Reed's voice broke off. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. For 7 years since Elias' birth, work had always come first. Meetings were never skipped, and personal emergencies were managed by hired help while he built his empire. But in that moment, as he stared at his phone's cracked screen reflecting the harsh lights, Reed understood that everything he thought mattered paled in comparison to the potential loss of his son. "We'll reschedule when I know Elias is safe." He left the boardroom behind, stepping away from $50 billion in possible income, and from the astonished faces of men who had seen him prioritize profit above all. As the elevator descended to the parking garage, a wave of guilt washed over him. When was the last time he talked to Elias about something other than schoolwork? When had he been there for a scraped knee or a bad dream? The truth was hard to accept. He had spent 6 years providing for Elias, but had not truly been there for him, missing the chance for their family to know the mother who had left before his birth. Reed's car sped through Manhattan traffic as he felt the weight of dread. His driver, Marcus, had been with the family since before Elias was born, and Reed's typical calm demeanor was replaced by real worry. "Children's Hospital, mister." "Mallister?" "As fast as you can drive." But even as he urged for speed, he kept circling back to the same difficult thought. How had he become the father who needed a teacher to inform him of emergencies? Shouldn't he have been the first contact? The reality was more complex and troubling than Reed wished to admit. He had distanced himself from Elias' daily life, believing that financial security was more important than being emotionally available. It was easier to let hired help manage the ups and downs of childhood than to engage deeply in parenting. Reed's phone buzzed with updates from his assistant, Margaret, who was coordinating with the hospital to ensure the best care for Elias. Money could usually solve problems quickly, and he had relied on that to handle unpredictable parts of life. But as they neared the hospital, Reed sensed that money wouldn't be enough this time. If Elias was really hurt, if there were complications, and if he faced the prospect of losing his child, no amount of wealth could shield him from the fallout of his own emotional distance. Through the tinted windows, he watched families together on the streets, parents gently holding little hands, children talking excitedly about their day, the simple joy of connection that Reed had carefully avoided since Elias was born. Memories he had suppressed for years came crashing back. Amara's face on the last day he saw her, tears flowing as she stood in his living room, protective of her growing belly. "This is our child, Reed. How can you ask me to disappear?" "It's not disappearing. It's being practical. You and the child will have everything you need," he had said awkwardly. But that day, he had chosen silence over honesty, knowing all too well that she was right about everything. His mother had been clear, saying Amara was unsuitable for their family. Faced with the choice, Reed took the easier route. He hired lawyers to make sure Amara got good financial support, but no rights as a parent. He told himself he was protecting Elias from having an unsuitable mother and wanted to give his son a stable life instead of the uncertainty of a mixed-race home that their social group wouldn't accept. But now, as he rushed to the hospital where his son was hurt, Reed wondered if he had really been protecting himself from the fear of loving someone who could leave or reject the controlled life he had built. "We're here, sir," the driver said. The hospital rose ahead like a sign of human weakness, all glass and steel stretching toward the sky. The emergency entrance was a gateway between the world where Reed's wealth meant everything and the world where only love mattered. He stepped out of the Bentley and walked toward the automatic doors, knowing whatever lay ahead would change everything he thought he knew about being a father, family, and the true cost of his choices from 6 years ago. Reed rushed through the emergency department doors with the urgency of a man used to taking charge in a crisis. The smell of antiseptic and anxiety hit him, along with the organized chaos of medical staff handling multiple emergencies. "My son," he told the receptionist, his voice firm. "Elias Mallister, 6 years old. Playground accident about an hour ago." The receptionist quickly typed on her computer. "Room 312, pediatric wing, 3rd floor." Reed dashed toward the elevators, the sound of his expensive shoes echoing on the floor. Families filled the waiting area, some crying, some praying, all sharing the unsettling feeling that comes when loved ones are out of reach. The elevator felt slow, each floor announcement resonating in Reed's chest like a countdown. When the doors finally opened on the pediatric wing, he was struck by how different it was from his usual world: soft colors, warm lighting, and artwork by young patients, all arranged to bring comfort. Room 312 was just ahead, and through the small window, Reed could see a small figure in the hospital bed that appeared too big for a 6-year-old. But it wasn't Elias that made Reed stop. It was the woman beside him, holding his small hand and speaking softly in a way Reed remembered too clearly. Amara. It had been 6 years since he last saw her, heard her voice, or faced the woman who once carried his child and whom he had worked to erase from their lives. Dressed in scrubs, her dark hair tied back, Amara showed a quiet strength that came from facing betrayal and choosing forgiveness. But what stopped Reed was the expression on Elias's face as he looked at Amara. Pure trust and happiness reflected the kind of joy Reed couldn't remember ever seeing directed at himself. Elias was speaking animatedly despite the bandages on his head, his eyes shining with excitement Reed only saw when his son talked about things he loved. Elias looked at Amara like she was the best person in the world because she was his mother, the one Reed had taken away from him before he was even born. Memories surged back for Reed Amara's face when she first felt their baby move, her joy in picking names, dreaming about their family, and her heartbreak when Reed's lawyers presented her with papers that gave her financial support but no rights in their child's life. Reed thought it was for the better. Elias would have stability and advantages that a mixed-race child with a working-class mother might not have. He would be a Mallister heir, not a question or complication needing explanation. But now, watching Amara with their son, He saw what his choice had truly cost Amara's chance at motherhood and Elias's chance to feel unconditionally loved by someone who wanted him from the start. Suddenly, Amara looked up, sensing she was being watched. Her brown eyes met Reed's through the glass, showing a mix of surprise, recognition, and perhaps sadness. She said something to Elias, who turned toward the door. When he saw Reed, his expression changed to careful politeness, the look of a child who learned to keep his expectations low around the main adult in his life. Reed pushed open the door and entered a room filled with the weight of 6 years of separation and the love that had been lost. "Hello, Reed," Amara said quietly, her voice steady yet layered with emotion. "Amara," Reed replied, his voice rougher than he intended. "I didn't know you worked here. I've been here for 3 years. I was doing community health outreach when they brought Elias in. I happened to be the volunteer coordinator on duty." Elias looked between them with the keen understanding children have when adults are trying to hide complex feelings. "Miss Amara stayed with me the whole time," he added, his voice small yet trusting. "She told me stories so I wouldn't be scared when they took pictures of my head." Reed felt something break in his heart. His son had been scared and alone, and a person who wasn't really a stranger had provided the comfort Reed should have given. "How is he?" Reed asked, trying to keep calm as he braced for the answer he feared. "The CT scan was clear," Amara replied with the composed voice of someone used to reassuring worried families. "He has a mild concussion and a few stitches where he got hurt. He'll need monitoring for a couple of days, but the doctors expect him to recover fully." Relief washed over Reed so intensely it left him dizzy for a moment. "I want to go home," Elias said softly, looking at Amara instead of Reed. "Will you come with us?" The question hovered in the air, bridging 6 years of distance. Reed saw the conflict on Amara's face. The mother wanted to say yes, but knew she had no legal right to make choices regarding their child. "That's up to your father," she responded carefully, but Reed heard the longing in her voice. Reed looked closely at his son and realized something important. Elias wasn't just polite around him. He was careful and guarded, managing himself because he had learned not to expect much from the one person who should have given him unconditional love. Standing there, Reed finally recognized the true cost of his decision 6 years ago. He hadn't only denied Amara her role in Elias's life, he had also taken away his son's chance to grow up feeling completely loved and wanted. The real question now was whether Reed had the courage to admit he had made a mistake and to ask for another chance to be the family they should have always been. Dr. Patricia Valdez was just the kind of pediatric doctor Reed expected to find at the city's best children's hospital. She was skilled, caring, and had a special way of connecting with both young patients and their worried families. Reed found himself in the family consultation area next to Elias's room. He had stepped away after seeing Amara help their son get settled for observation. Through the doorway, he could see them together. Amara was reading from a book, and Elias was listening with a focused attention that Reed couldn't remember ever receiving from him. "Mr. Mallister, I am Dr. Valdez," she said. Reed stood up straight, trying to appear in control, a skill that had helped him in many business deals. But in this medical setting, he felt that being strong wasn't enough. He needed to show vulnerability, too. "Doctor, please tell me everything about my son," he urged. "Let's sit down and discuss this properly." She gestured toward chairs positioned so they could still see Elias. Reed's stomach tightened, fearing that this invitation meant bad news was coming. "Physically, Elias is going to recover completely," Dr. Valdez started, and Reed felt a rush of relief wash over him. "The concussion is mild, the stitches will heal well, and there is no sign of lasting effects on his brain. Thank goodness. However," Dr. Valdez continued, "I do have some concerns about Elias that go beyond his physical injuries." Reed's relief began to shift into worry. What kind of concerns? Dr. Valdez consulted her tablet. "When children Elias's age go through trauma, we usually see expected emotional reactions. They tend to cry for their parents, ask repeatedly when they can go home, and seek comfort from familiar adults. Sometimes they fall back into younger behaviors to cope." "That sounds normal," Reed said, trying to reassure himself. "It is normal. It's what we usually hope for, as it shows healthy emotional development." Dr. Valdez paused, choosing her words carefully. But Elias showed very few of these typical reactions. Reed felt a heavy weight in his chest. What do you mean? When he arrived, he was surprisingly calm for a child who had just gone through something hard. He answered our questions clearly, followed instructions well, and never asked about when you would get there. Each word felt like a blow to Reed's heart. He never asked for me? The only question he kept asking was, "Is Miss Amara here today?" When we confirmed she was volunteering and could be there for him, he relaxed completely. It was as if he had been holding himself together until the right person arrived. Reed looked through the window at his son, who was laughing at something Amara was doing. The sound of Elias's laughter was both beautiful and painful, because Reed couldn't remember being the reason for such joy. "Dr. Valdez, I need to understand. How does Elias know Amara? They've never met before today." Lying had become second nature to Reed. Dr. Valdez studied his face, skilled at understanding complicated family dynamics. "Mr. Mallister, children are often very good at recognizing those who represent safety and love, even if they can't remember meeting them. However, this seems more specific." Reed's heart raced. "What do you mean?" During his medical history questions, he mentioned he knew Miss Amara from pictures. He said he had photographs of the lady who looks like him. Reed felt as if the world had shifted beneath him. Elias had pictures of Amara. That couldn't be right. Reed had made sure there were no signs of her in their home, no reminders of the choice he had made. "That's not possible. There are no photographs of Amara in our home." "Perhaps you should ask Elias about that," Dr. Valdez suggested gently. "Children often notice things that adults think they've hidden. They pick up on more than we realize." Reed sensed the cracks forming in his carefully built story. Had Elias discovered the truth about Amara? Had Reed's attempts to shield his son from their complicated family history only caused more confusion? "Dr. Valdez, what would you recommend for Elias's recovery? I know that recovering from a concussion is about more than just healing physically. Elias needs emotional support, consistent care from people he trusts, and the chance to process this trauma without added stress." She pointed toward the room where Amara was showing Elias how to make paper airplanes. "Miss Amara seems to help him feel safe and understood. If she could assist with his care at home, I think it would greatly help him." Reed stood at a difficult crossroads he had avoided for 6 years. He could keep the lie going, pretending Amara was just a kind stranger, or finally face the truth about what he had taken from both of them. "Dr. Valdez, there is something I need to share about Amara and Elias." The doctor waited patiently, accustomed to hearing tough family truths. "Amara is Elias's mother, his real mother. We have a complicated past." Dr. Valdez listened carefully, her expression remaining calm. "And Miss Fields has not been part of Elias's life? By my choice, I have full custody. Amara has not been in contact since he was born. But Elias recognizes her. He has photographs." Reed realized his son saw things far more clearly than he had thought. Despite Reed's best efforts to erase Amara from their lives, Elias had uncovered the truth about his mother. "Mr. Mallister, I won't pretend to understand how this situation came to be, but I will say this. Your son needs loving support during his recovery, and from what I have seen, Miss Fields provides just that care." As Dr. Valdez prepared to leave, she paused. "Children who grow up knowing they are loved without conditions recover from tough times more fully and quickly than those who feel they have to earn affection. Whatever your history with Miss Fields, it's clear she loves Elias wholeheartedly. That's not something you can hire, Mr. Mallister. It's something you must choose to accept or reject." After the doctor left, Reed stayed in the consultation area, looking through the window at the woman who had once carried his child and at the son who had somehow learned of her existence despite Reed's attempts to keep them apart. For 6 years, Reed had told himself that he was protecting Elias from confusion. But watching them now, seeing the happiness and safety on his son's face, Reed began to realize he had really been protecting himself from admitting he had made a serious mistake. The question was whether he had the bravery to make things right. Reed now faced a painful truth. Elias somehow knew Amara was his mother, Despite Reed's efforts to hide this, he must decide whether to continue the falsehood that had shaped their lives or finally tell the truth. The drive home from the hospital felt like a journey between two different worlds. Reed's Bentley moved smoothly through Manhattan traffic, but the mood inside felt charged with unspoken truths and 6 years of carefully crafted lies. Elias sat in his booster seat, hospital papers in his small hands, his head still bandaged but his eyes shining with an excitement Reed hadn't seen in months. Amara sat beside him, keeping her professional calm, but Reed could sense her anxiety about returning to the world she had been away from for 6 years. "Miss Amara," Elias said, breaking the silence with the straightforwardness only children have, "are you going to stay at our house tonight?" Reed felt a tightness in his chest. The doctor had advised someone stay with Elias for the first 2 days after his concussion, keeping an eye on him and ensuring he didn't sleep too deeply. Reed's busy work schedule usually made that impossible. "If your father thinks that's best," Amara replied carefully, her eyes meeting Reed's in the rearview mirror. "I want you to stay," Elias said simply. "You make everything feel safer." Reed's penthouse was a grand space, built on the top floors of Mallister Tower. It had been featured in design magazines for its sleek lines and beautiful views of Central Park. But as they walked in through the private elevator, Reed saw his home through Amara's eyes and felt ashamed of its cold perfection. Everything was perfectly arranged and spotless, lacking any warmth. The living areas looked like displays in a museum rather than spaces where a family lived. There were no fingerprints on the large windows, no toys left out, and no signs of a 6-year-old boy living there. "Wow," Amara said quietly, taking in the marble floors and elegant furniture. "It's very impressive." Reed understood what she didn't say. It was also not suitable for a child. "Mrs. Patterson keeps it all tidy," Reed explained, referring to the housekeeper who made sure his home remained magazine-ready. "Elias has learned to be very careful with his things." Amara's expression changed slightly, and Reed realized how that sounded. A 6-year-old trained to act like a guest in his own home. "Can I show Miss Amara my room?" Elias asked, tugging on Reed's sleeve with more excitement than Reed had seen in a long time. Of course, Reed followed them down the hall past unused guest rooms and office spaces reflecting his need to work. Elias' room was at the end of the hall, a space Reed had designed for the perfect child's environment. But as he watched Amara take in the custom furniture and toys arranged neatly, he began to see it differently. This wasn't a little boy's room. It was a showcase meant to prove that money could buy everything a child needed. "This is beautiful, sweetheart," Amara said, kneeling to Elias' level as she looked at his bookshelf. But Reed caught the sadness in her voice as she noticed the pristine condition of toys that showed no signs of play. "And this is my special drawer," Elias said, opening the bottom drawer of his nightstand excitedly. Reed was shocked when his son revealed a small collection of items that clearly didn't belong in the carefully organized space. He pulled out a few photographs, a hospital bracelet, and a folded piece of paper. "See? I told you I had pictures of the nice lady who looks like me." Elias held up the photos, and Reed felt his world shift. They were photographs of Amara, some from her social media, others from articles about her community work. His 6-year-old son had somehow found out about his mother and was secretly collecting evidence of her life. "Where did you get these?" Reed's voice came out strained. "Mrs. Patterson's computer. When she lets me play games, I sometimes search for pictures of people who look like me. I found Miss Amara everywhere and printed them when Mrs. Patterson wasn't looking." Reed felt like the ground was falling away beneath him. His son had been investigating his family history, while Reed thought he was protecting him. "And this," Elias continued, unfolding the paper, "is my birth certificate. I saw it one day when I was helping her organize. It was in the kitchen drawer." Reed stared at the document Elias held, which clearly listed Amara Fields as his mother, the legal proof of the relationship Reed had tried to hide for 6 years. "You know, don't you?" Amara said softly, tears in her eyes. "You figured it out?" Elias nodded. "I learned a long time ago. Daddy doesn't like to talk about mommies, but I wanted to know who mine was. Are you sad that I found you?" Amara embraced Elias, tears flowing down her face. "Oh, baby, I'm not sad. I'm the happiest I've been in 6 years." Reed watched this moment, the first true hug between mother and child, and felt the weight of what his choices had cost them. Not just Amara's right to be a mother, but Elias' right to feel loved from the start. "Daddy," Elias said, looking at Reed over Amara's shoulder, "why did you tell everyone she went away? She's right here in the city. I found articles about the clinic where she helps sick kids." Reed realized how perceptive and clever his son was. While Reed thought he was protecting Elias from complicated family issues, his son had quietly pieced together the reality and wondered why his father chose to lie instead of being honest. "It's complicated," Reed replied. "That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to share the truth," Elias said, sounding wise beyond his years. "But I'm not stupid. I know Miss Amara is my mom, and I know you didn't want her to be." Reed's words hung in the air, heavy with regret. They reminded him of every choice he had made since Amara told him she was going to have a baby. "Let's get you settled in," Amara said softly, sensing the emotions filling the room. "You need rest, and your father and I need to have a conversation." As Amara got Elias ready for bed, reading him stories and checking his bandages, Reed stood in the doorway. He watched the bond he had kept them from sharing. This was what he had taken from both of them. It was not just about their individual relationships. It was about the natural connection between mother and child. Despite everything, Elias had found his way back to that bond. That evening, while Reed worked in his study, Amara stayed with Elias, watching over him as the doctor had advised. Through the baby monitor he had set up, Reed could hear their calm conversation. Amara asked Elias about school, his friends, and what he liked to do. Reed realized he didn't know much about his son's life at all. "Do you like living in this big apartment?" Amara asked. "A little," Elias replied. "But it's really quiet. Sometimes I talk to myself just to hear voices." Reed paused, feeling a weight in his chest. When did their home become a place where silence was better than laughter? "What do you do for fun?" Amara asked. "I read books and practice piano. Mrs. Patterson says I'm getting good. Sometimes I watch educational shows." A sense of unease grew in Reed as he listened to his son. Elias described a childhood that felt more like preparing for adulthood rather than truly being a child. Where were the fun, playful activities that other kids enjoyed? "That sounds impressive, but what do you do just for fun?" Amara gently prodded. A long pause followed, and Reed held his breath, waiting for Elias's answer. "I don't know. I guess I look at pictures of you on the computer. That makes me happy." Reed's heart sank. His son found joy in viewing pictures of the mother he rarely saw. "Elias, can I tell you something?" "Okay. I never stopped thinking about you, not for one single day. I always wondered if you were happy and if you liked to read." "Really? You thought about me every day?" "And I wished things could be different." Reed realized he was listening in on a conversation he should have had years ago. He was witnessing Elias meet the mother who had never stopped loving him. A soft knock at the study door broke his thoughts. "Come in," he called, quickly turning off the monitor. Amara entered, quietly shutting the door behind her. She had changed out of her hospital scrubs into jeans and a sweater. Reed noted how well she fit into their home. "He's asleep. His color is good and his reflexes seem normal. I'll check on him every 2 hours, as the doctor suggested," she said. "Thank you." Reed gestured to a chair. "We need to talk." Amara sat down, trying to maintain her professional demeanor, but Reed could see her emotions bubbling just below the surface. "I want you to know I am not trying to disrupt your life. Elias needed care, and I was there for him. You made a sensible choice," she said. "But doesn't this change things?" Reed asked, surprised. "I spent the last 3 hours listening to you and our son talk. It was clear you know him better now than I do after 6 years." Reed stepped to the window, looking out at families enjoying their time together. "You asked him about friends, favorite things, what makes him happy. I don't know any of that. I only know his grades and reports." "Do you realize what that means?" Amara pressed. "You've created a home so quiet that your son has to entertain himself." Reed turned to face her. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in his expression. I've been saying for years I was protecting him, giving him a safe and structured life. But perhaps I was really protecting myself from being involved. Why? Amara asked gently. What scared you? Failing him like I failed you. Making promises I couldn't keep. It felt safer to manage him from a distance. I structured things so they wouldn't go wrong. Amara joined him by the window. They gazed at the city lights, representing countless families who navigated love and care. Reed, can I ask you something honest? She said. Of course. Do you regret having Elias? Do you wish this hadn't happened? The question hit Reed hard. No, Elias is the best thing I've ever done. He means everything to me. Then why act as if he's a burden? He deserves more than just to be managed. Tears prickled Reed's eyes. I've realized I was afraid of loving him fully, of being vulnerable. That kind of love leaves you open to loss. You thought it was better to not connect at all? Amara asked. Reed knew that was true. He had chosen to focus on being a provider instead of being a caring father. I need to learn how to be his dad, not just someone who provides, he said. You'll need to show up for him, even when it's not easy. Will you let me help? The question surprised both of them. Amara studied Reed's face, looking for any signs of past manipulation. What exactly do you want from me? I'm asking if you'll stay not just for tonight or while Elias heals. I need you to help me be the father he truly deserves. Help me figure out how to make this place feel like a home instead of a showroom. Reed, 6 years ago, you made it very clear that I wasn't suitable to be part of your family. 6 years ago, I was a fool who chose other people's opinions over my own feelings. I was afraid and let that fear guide my choices. Reed moved closer to her, close enough to see the hope and doubt in her eyes. I'm not the same person who let you walk away alone and expecting a child. But I'm not asking you to trust me right away. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I've changed. The next morning brought Reed's first challenge of commitment versus convenience. His assistant, Margaret, called at 6 a.m. with a situation that threatened everything. The Singapore investors were saying they might pull out of the merger unless Reed could reassure them face to face. They're worried about your reliability after you left so suddenly, Margaret explained carefully. Mr. Chen specifically mentioned they need a CEO who focuses on business over personal issues. Reed sat in his kitchen, still in his robe, watching Amara make pancakes, while Elias sat at the counter sharing a dream about living in a castle made of books. The scene felt so right that the idea of leaving for a meeting felt like stepping back into a life he no longer wanted. What did you tell them? Reed asked. That you'd be in the office within the hour to talk to them? Reed looked at Elias, whose head injury needed watching for at least another day, and then at Amara, who was gaining confidence in loving a child she barely knew, but always cared about. Margaret, please call Mr. Chen and set up a video conference for this afternoon. If that's not good enough, then maybe we're not right for each other. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. This deal represents 18 months of negotiations and could bring in billions. Are you sure you want to risk that for a personal issue that could be handled by professionals? Reed realized this was exactly the type of choice that had shaped his life for 6 years. Business commitments versus family presence, financial success versus emotional connection. Margaret, I'm going to say something I should have said a long time ago. My son is not just a personal issue. He's my family, and he comes first. After the call, Reed found Amara and Elias looking at him with surprise and hope. You're not going to work today? Elias asked, as if the idea was strange. Not today. Today I'm going to learn how to make pancakes and hear more about your castle dream. The day that followed was a revelation for Reed. Without meetings and deadlines, he engaged with actual fatherhood. It was messy, unpredictable, and required patience rather than efficiency. Amara taught him to really listen to Elias, to follow a 6-year-old's tangents instead of steering them toward lessons. She showed him how to read stories with different voices, how to build structures with kitchen supplies, and how to find joy in simple moments. The secret, Amara said as they built a fort from chairs and blankets, is not to control every moment. Kids don't need perfect activities. They need caring adults who are interested in their creativity. Reed watched Elias change throughout the day. The polite child who usually moved through their home like a guest relaxed into being himself. He laughed loudly, made messes without concern, and asked questions without hesitation. "Daddy," Elias said during their lunchtime picnic, "why didn't we ever do this before?" Reed felt the question deeply, because I didn't know how, but I'm learning. "Will you remember how when Miss Amara goes home?" Reed glanced at Amara, who was listening closely to the conversation. "What if Miss Amara didn't have to go home? What if this became her home, too?" Elias' face lit up with joy. "Really? She could stay forever?" Reed replied, his gaze steady on Amara's face. "That would be up to her. It would mean we would all have to learn how to be a family together. That's not always easy, but it would be worth it," Elias said with the kind of certainty that only children have about love. Reed realized that whatever challenges came with building their family, it would be worth it to see Elias this happy and secure. At 2:47 a.m., Elias's screams broke the peace of Reed's home. It wasn't just a child's cry for attention, but a deep fear from a nightmare he couldn't understand. Reed ran to Elias' room, his heart racing. He found Amara sitting by their son's bed, trying to wake him from a frightening dream. "No, don't make her go away again, please don't," Elias cried, battling the shadows of his dreams, which were probably reflections of their family's history. "Elias, wake up, sweetheart. You're safe. We're both here." But when Elias opened his eyes, he looked at Reed with a fearful expression that felt like a weight on Reed's heart. "You're going to make her leave, aren't you? Just like before." Reed felt the reality of his past choices weigh heavily on him. His 6-year-old son feared abandonment, knowing that those he loved could vanish without warning. "Elias, I promise you, I won't let that happen." His little voice trembled. Mrs. Patterson said that sometimes daddies make hard choices that are best for their little boys. But I don't want what's best. I want my mommy. Elias collapsed onto Amara, crying with the kind of hurt no child should feel. "I'm here now, sweetheart," Amara whispered, holding him close. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I promise. Promise you won't let Daddy send you away again." Amara looked at Reed over their son's head, her eyes showing the same worry Elias had. They both knew that keeping promises about staying together needed Reed's support, and he had not kept such promises before. "I promise I will do my best to stay with you," Amara said slowly. "But some things are bigger than what I want. Some things depend on other people making different choices than they did before." Reed understood this was a crucial moment. It wasn't in some far-off future after he had time to think, but right now, with their son in Amara's arms, asking for the one thing Reed could either give or take away. "Elias, look at me!" His son turned toward him, his face wet with tears and filled with longing. "I made a big mistake 6 years ago. I let fear guide my actions instead of love. I sent your mother away, not because it was best for you, but because I was scared of what others would think. But you won't have to worry about that again." Reed knelt beside the bed, getting down to his son's level for this important talk. "I will never send your mother away again. Whatever happens, whatever problems we face, and whatever others say about us, we will handle them together, just the three of us." Elias then said, "Even if grandmother says mean things about Miss Amara again?" Reed's heart sank coldly. "What do you know about grandmother saying mean things?" Elias replied, "I heard her on the phone with Mrs. Patterson last year. She said Miss Amara was unsuitable and that I would be better off without complications. I didn't understand what that meant, but it sounded like she didn't want me to have a mommy." Reed realized that his family's beliefs had been hurting his son's view of love, family, and his own value for years. Elias had been carrying the weight of knowing some adults thought his mother, and by extension himself, were unworthy. "Elias, listen closely. Your mother is not a complication. She's not unsuitable. She's the woman who carried you before you were born. She loved you before she ever saw you, and she never stopped hoping to be your mommy." "Then why did you make her leave?" Elias asked. "Because I was afraid. Afraid that loving her and allowing her to love us would be too hard or too different from what my family wanted. But I was wrong about everything except one thing: she loves you more than anything." I love both of you more than I ever thought possible, more than my work, more than what others think, and more than the approval of people who don't understand what it means to be a real family. So we can be a real family with a mommy and a daddy living together, if your mother will give us that chance. Reed looked at Amara, feeling open and vulnerable. Will you? Will you give us the chance to be the family we always should have been? Amara looked back and forth between Reed and Elias, seeing hope and fear in both their expressions. She understood that her answer would change everything. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want to try. The next morning was the first real test of Reed's promise to put family first. Virginia Mallister arrived at their home unannounced at 8 a.m. She came through the private elevator with the confident air of someone used to getting what she wanted. Reed was in the kitchen with Amara and Elias, trying to make French toast with Amara's guidance, when his mother's voice cut through the peaceful moment. Reed Alexander Mallister, we need to talk about this situation right now. Reed felt Elias tense beside him, his natural happiness replaced by the careful, reserved behavior he showed around his grandmother. Amara stood closer to Elias, sensing the tension. Mother, Reed said carefully, this is Amara Fields. Amara, meet my mother, Virginia Mallister. Virginia's gaze skimmed over Amara with disinterest. Miss Fields, I understand you've been involved in Elias's care. I've been helping with his recovery, Amara replied. Yes, how thoughtful of you, Virginia said, her tone condescending. Reed felt defensive. Amara is more than just a supporter, Mother. She is Elias's mother. The mood in the room shifted sharply. I see. And you thought it was okay to allow this person back into your home without discussing it with the family? Without thinking about Elias' well-being? Grandmother, Elias said softly. Miss Amara is my mommy. She cares for me and makes me feel safe. Virginia looked down at him, managing to convey both love and disapproval. Darling, I know this is confusing for you, but sometimes adults have to make hard choices about what's best for children, even when it's upsetting. Reed watched his mother try to influence Elias, using the same tactics she had once used on him, and he felt a change inside him. Mother, you can't manipulate my son to support your views. You will not make him feel guilty for loving his mother. You will not use my love for you as a reason to tear our family apart again. Reed, please, lower your voice. You're scaring the child. Reed turned to Elias, who was watching the confrontation with wide eyes, not scared, but hopeful, as if he was seeing his father stand up for what mattered. What's scary is that you think loving someone who doesn't fit your ideas is harmful to a child. What's scary is you want your grandson to grow up without his mother because of your prejudices. Virginia straightened, preparing to deliver her ultimate threat. If you continue with this relationship, there will be repercussions. Your job, your place in society, everything depends on keeping up the right standards. Then let it all go, Reed said, his voice firm with a conviction he hadn't felt 6 years ago. Let them question my choices. Let society talk about what I do. None of that matters more than giving my son the family he deserves. You're willing to throw away everything your father built? Everything our family stands for? Reed looked at Elias, who was holding Amara's hand, observing as Reed chose between family legacy and love. What our family stands for, Mother, is the belief that love should not depend on social status, that children are not possessions to be controlled but people to be cherished. If that's my father's legacy, then yes, I'm ready to let it go. For the first time, Reed saw his mother's composure crack. You are making a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your life. The mistake that follows me is the one I made 6 years ago when I let you persuade me that Amara wasn't right for our family. The mistake is that I waited too long to fix it. Reed stood next to Amara and Elias, placing himself firmly between his mother and his chosen family. Amara and Elias are my family now. They are who I choose. If you can't accept that choice and can't treat them with love and respect, then you are choosing not to be part of our lives. Virginia looked at her son, perhaps seeing for the first time that the boy she had shaped had grown into a man who could choose love over fear. I'll contact you when you come to your senses, she said coldly, but Reed could hear the uncertainty in her voice. After she left, the kitchen felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from all of them. Elias said quietly, Are you really going to pick us over grandmother? Reed knelt down to his son's level and took his small hands in his own. Elias, I want you to remember something very important. Choosing love is never wrong. Protecting the people you care about is never wrong. And making a family based on kindness instead of rules is never wrong, even if it makes other people upset. Especially then, those who get upset when you choose love are showing you that their love has limits. Real love, like what your mother has for you, and what I am learning to have for both of you, has no limits. Reed looked at Amara, noticing tears in her eyes and perhaps a sense of pride. We will face more challenges, and there will be others who do not understand or accept our family, but we will face them together, all three of us, as a real family. For the first time in 6 years, Reed felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 3 days later, Reed's decision to prioritize his family over work gained attention when a gossip blogger published photos of him leaving a children's museum with Amara and Elias, along with an article titled Tech Mogul's Secret Connection. The story was a mix of sensationalism with just enough truth to be considered valid. It labeled Amara as a community worker who had suddenly appeared in Reed's life as his work behavior became unpredictable. Reed found out about the media storm when his phone started ringing at 6 a.m. with calls from reporters, colleagues, and board members wanting answers for what the Wall Street Journal was calling a private crisis. "Sir," Margaret's voice was tense, "we have 17 interview requests, 4 gossip shows wanting comments, and the board has called an emergency meeting for today." Reed looked across the breakfast table at Amara, who was reading about the situation on her tablet with rising horror. "They are making me look like someone who wants to take advantage of you," she said quietly. "One article claims I am trying to manipulate a vulnerable single father." Elias looked up from his cereal, puzzled by the sudden tension. "Are the newspapers talking about us?" Reed said carefully, trying to explain the media's invasion of their privacy. "Some people are very curious about our family." "Are they saying bad things about Miss Amara?" Reed realized there was no way to shield his son from the reality that some people would always disapprove of their family. Choosing love over convention brought public consequences. Some people don't understand why Daddy and Miss Amara love each other. They think it's unusual, so they are writing stories about us. "But we know the real story," Elias said with the clear logic of a 6-year-old. "We know Miss Amara loves me, and you love us both. Why don't we just tell everyone the truth?" Reed looked at his innocent son and realized that sometimes the simplest solutions are the bravest ones. "You know what, Elias? That's exactly what we should do." Instead of hiding from the media attention or trying to manage the narrative, Reed decided to tell the complete truth publicly and accept the consequences. That afternoon, instead of going to the emergency board meeting, Reed set up a press conference in the lobby of his building. With Amara beside him and Elias holding both their hands, he faced a room full of reporters who were waiting for defensive answers. 6 years ago," Reed began, his voice steady, "I made the worst decision of my life. When the woman I loved told me she was going to have my child, I chose fear over courage, the expectations of others over my own heart." Camera flashes went off as reporters realized this was not going to be an ordinary corporate statement. "I allowed Amara to leave my life, not because she was wrong for me or for Elias, but because I was too weak to defend our relationship against people who thought love should be limited by race, class, and social norms." Reed looked down at Elias, who was listening with the serious attention typical of important adult conversations. "For 6 years, my son grew up without his mother, not because she wanted to leave, but because I chose not to fight for her. That was my fault and my responsibility." A reporter interrupted. "Are you saying you have been separated from your child's mother all this time on purpose?" "I am saying I used money and power to keep Amara out of Elias' life. Even though she wanted to be there, I convinced myself I was protecting him from difficulties, but I was actually taking away the love he deserved." Reed felt Amara squeeze his hand, lending him strength for the most important speech of his life. "Yesterday, my mother threatened to use family money and connections to force me to choose between my job and my family. She offered wealth and status in exchange for sending Amara away again." "And what did you choose?" another reporter asked. Reed looked straight at the cameras, understanding that this moment would shape not just his public image, but also his son's view of what courage meant. I chose love. I chose the woman who never stopped caring about our child. I chose to be the father Elias always needed instead of the businessman everyone expected me to be. I chose to build a family based on love, not fear. Mr. Mallister, what about your business? If my partners cannot respect my choices as a father, then they are not partners I want. If my social circle cannot accept the woman I love and the family we are making together, then it's not a circle I want to be in. Reed knelt down to his son Elias's level. It was a moment of showing their family bond in front of others. Elias, do you want to say something to everyone about our family? Elias looked around at the adults with cameras, then spoke clearly, knowing he was surrounded by love. Miss Amara is my mommy. She makes the best pancakes and makes scary things not scary anymore, and my daddy is learning how to be a great daddy, and we are happy. Elias's simple words cut through all the noise, showing their family's truth, a family staying together despite challenges. That evening, as they watched the news about their press conference, Reed felt proud. They had taken control of their own story instead of being judged by the media. They chose to be together as a family, not hiding from what others thought. Do you regret it? Amara asked as they listened to the commentators. I regret waiting 6 years to do this, Reed answered. But no, I don't regret choosing you. I don't regret choosing us. The emergency board meeting Reed had avoided took place without him. The next morning, his attorney and friend, Gerald Hartman, brought important papers that would challenge Reed to face the cost of his choice to love. We need to talk about what the board decided, Gerald said as he settled into a chair in Reed's study. While Amara and Elias worked on a puzzle, Reed poured coffee, feeling this was different from usual business troubles. Normally, he would focus on protecting his interests, but now his family was in his thoughts, hearing Elias's laughter from the other room. What is their position? Reed asked. Gerald opened his briefcase carefully. They are questioning your decisions. Yesterday's press conference, the failed deal in Singapore, and all the media coverage. They say you are a risk to the company's reputation and stock price. They want to offer you a buyout. You would get a fair price for your shares and a good severance package. In return, you would step down as CEO and leave the company completely. To Reed's surprise, he felt a strange relief instead of panic. So they want to push me out? Gerald nodded. They want to give you a way out that keeps your dignity. You could have enough money to never work again, focus on what you love, and raise your family without pressure. What if I refuse? Gerald's look grew serious. Then they would try to remove you formally, saying your personal choices have affected your responsibilities. It would be public and could harm your long-term finances. Reed walked to the window and looked out at families enjoying the day in the park. Parents with strollers, children feeding ducks, people choosing time together over work. Gerald, can I ask you something honestly? Reed said. Sure, Gerald replied. Do you think I've lost my way? Am I throwing away everything smart for a dream? Gerald took his time. Reed, I've known you for 15 years. I've seen you build your business through hard work and clever choices, but I've also seen you become more alone and distant from what really made you happy. You've been very successful, but it hasn't brought you joy. Gerald looked towards the living room where Amara and Elias were playing a game and laughing together. In the last week, you seem more relaxed and truly happy than I've seen in years. If that means you're losing your way, then maybe being sensible isn't all that great. Reed realized his old advisor was encouraging him to choose happiness over ambition. What would you do if you were me? Reed asked. I would think about which choice I'd regret more. Losing the company you built, or losing the family you just found. That evening, Reed brought Amara and Elias together in the living room for a family meeting. It was the first time he looked at a big choice as something to talk about with them instead of just telling them what to do. I need to share some choices we have to make together, he began, sitting on the floor while Elias built a Lego castle. The people in my company don't approve of our family. They think I should only focus on business, not on being a daddy or loving your mommy. Elias looked up, serious. What do they want you to do? They want me to choose between keeping my company and keeping our family together. That's silly, Elias said with the logic of a 6-year-old. Companies are just buildings and meetings. Families are people who love each other. Reed admired his son's clear understanding of what matters most. You're right, but choosing family might mean we have less money, a smaller house, and fewer nice things. Elias took a moment to think. Would we still have pancakes for breakfast? Yes. Would Miss Amara still be my mommy? Yes. Would you still be my daddy? Always. Then we have everything we need. Reed turned to Amara, who had tears in her eyes as she watched their son prioritize love over money. What about you? Reed asked her. Are you ready for what it might mean to build a life where love is more important than money? Amara came to sit by them, joining their family circle. Reed, for 6 years you chose money over love, and it hurt us all. If you're finally ready to choose love above all else, then yes, I'm ready for whatever that means. Even if it means starting over, even if it means building something completely different from what I planned. The best families aren't built on money. They're built on being together, being committed, and always showing up for each other. Reed looked at his small family, his wonderful son who understood what truly mattered, and the woman who had loved him through 6 hard years. He saw the chance to build something real, and he knew his choice was clearer than he thought. Then let's choose love. Let's choose each other. Let's build the family we should have been from the start. Reed had made his choice to prioritize family over work success. Now, he faced the true test. Could he really follow through when the outcomes became real? The growing situation had reached a turning point where love had to be stronger than a life focused on status and success. Reed signed the resignation papers at 9 a.m. on Monday in the same conference room where he had left the Singapore merger to rush to his son's hospital bedside. He felt the weight of the moment. The room that had marked the start of his change was now the place where his 20-year career ended. Gerald Hartman sat across from him, overseeing the paperwork that would end Reed's ties to Mallister Industries for good. The buyout offer was generous, more money than many would ever see, but Reed felt strangely empty as he signed away what he had built. Second thoughts? Gerald asked, noticing Reed's pause as the pen hovered over the last line. No, just sadness. This company had been part of who I am for so long that letting it go feels like losing a part of myself. Or maybe it feels like rediscovering another part of yourself, Gerald suggested gently. The part that created this company because you wanted to make something meaningful, not just to prove yourself to others. Reed signed his name, officially ending his time as the CEO of his empire. What happens now? Gerald asked. Now I go home to my family and figure out how to be the father and partner they deserve instead of the businessman everyone expected me to be. But as Reed prepared to leave the building that had been his second home, his assistant Margaret approached him with urgent news that would challenge his new priorities. Mr. Mallister, I've been tracking the news since your press conference, and there's something you need to know. Reed's stomach sank. What now? Someone leaked Amara's background to the tabloids, details about her family, financial issues, and the agreements from 6 years ago. They're making her look very bad. Margaret handed him a tablet showing the morning's headlines. Gold Digger's Long Game Revealed, How a Nurse Played the Ultimate Con. Reed read the articles with growing dread. Someone had shared private details about Amara's life, from her time in foster care to her student loans, and even his support during her pregnancy. The articles painted her as someone who had carefully plotted to win his fortune. This is character assassination, Reed said, frustrated. It gets worse. Someone contacted Child Protective Services with concerns about Elias's well-being. They're saying his attachment to a new mother figure might mean there is something wrong at home. Reed felt a wave of fear wash over him. They are questioning our ability as parents. A caseworker will visit this afternoon. It's probably routine, but with all the media, Reed realized that choosing love over business might have made his son vulnerable. Someone was using the system against them. Who would do this? Who knows so much about our private lives? Margaret's face was serious. Someone with the power and desire to hurt you for your choices by trying to destroy the family you're trying to protect. Reed didn't need to ask who. There was only one person with the motive and means to orchestrate such a plan, his mother. When Reed got home, He found Amara in their bedroom, packing a small suitcase. Her movements were quick, but showed sadness, like someone expecting a different ending. "You saw the news?" Reed said, more a statement than a question. "I saw enough," Amara replied. Her voice was calm, but Reed could see her heartache. "I can't let this ruin Elias's life. I can't let them use my presence to hurt him." "So you're leaving?" "I'm doing this to protect both of you. This scrutiny about my intentions matches exactly what your mother warned about 6 years ago." Reed sat on the bed, watching the woman he loved prepare to leave for their son's sake. "Amara, you can't believe those articles. You can't think I believe them." "It doesn't matter what we believe," she replied. "What matters is what Child Protective Services believes. Right now, they think I'm someone who manipulated you into neglecting your responsibilities for a financial scheme." Reed took her hands, stopping her packing. "Then we fight. We show them the truth about our family." "With what credibility? I'm just a community worker with student loans going against a powerful family. They have lawyers, resources, connections, and I have good intentions and a nursing degree." Before Reed could respond, the doorbell rang. They heard Elias at the door, addressing the visitor with the formality he learned. "Daddy, there's a lady here who says she needs to talk to our family about important stuff." Reed and Amara exchanged worried looks. The caseworker had come earlier than expected. Susan Chen, a middle-aged woman with warm eyes, spent the next 2 hours observing them, asking thoughtful questions about their lives and Elias's feelings. "Elias," she said, kneeling to his level in the living room while Reed and Amara watched nervously. "Can you tell me about your family?" "I have a daddy who used to be really busy, but now he makes pancakes with me. And I have a mommy who tells the best stories and knows how to make scared feelings go away. We live together and take care of each other." "And how do you feel about that?" Susan asked gently. "Happy. Really, really happy. Like when you've been holding your breath underwater and then you get to breathe again." Reed felt his heart tighten at his son's description of relief, realizing that Elias had felt lost without his mother. "Elias, has anyone ever made you feel unsafe or scared since your mommy came to live here?" "No. I feel safer now because I have both my mommy and my daddy to help me." After Susan interviewed each of them separately, she gathered them in the living room for her first impression. "I want to be clear," she began, reviewing her notes. "The concerns raised about this household don't match what I'm observing. Elias seems well cared for, emotionally secure, and genuinely happy. His bond with Miss Field appears natural and healthy." Reed felt some of his tension lift. Susan continued. "There are still questions about when and how Miss Fields came back into Elias's life. The fact that she had no previous contact with him, along with the strong media attention, raises some issues I need to look into more." "What does that mean?" Amara asked. "It means I'll be filing a report suggesting we keep an eye on things for the next 6 months. This will include monthly check-ins, checking in with Elias to ensure he is adjusting well, and documenting the family's stability during this time of change." Reed realized they were being watched, their family questioned because someone had used the legal system against them. "Miss Chen," Reed asked carefully, "can you tell us who made the first complaint?" "I'm not allowed to share that information, but I can say it came through official channels and included serious claims that needed investigation." After Susan left, Reed, Amara, and Elias sat together on the couch, trying to process the fact that their happiness was now under government scrutiny. "Daddy," Elias said softly, "are they going to make Miss Amara leave again?" Reed looked at his son's worried face and made a decision that would change everything. "No one is going to make your mommy go away. Not the government, not the papers, not even Grandma. We're going to stand up for our family and we're going to win." "How?" Amara asked. Reed replied, "We are up against powerful forces without any morals. How can we fight that?" He thought about the life he had given up for the chance to love freely. "We fight by being better than they are, showing everyone what a real family looks like and refusing to be ashamed of choosing love over convenience." Reed stood up, feeling a new determination. "And we start by taking action instead of just defending ourselves." His next move was a phone call to his mother at 6 a.m. to catch her before she was ready for a fight. "Mother, we need to talk." Before you deny anything, know that I have people tracing the leak of Amara's personal information back to its source. Virginia was silent on the other end of the line. Reed, I don't know what you think you found, but I see it this way. You are willing to use Child Protective Services against your grandchild to punish me for choosing love over your approval. Reed felt his anger turn into something firm. Mother, I will say this once, and I need you to listen. If you keep interfering with my family or trying to separate Elias from his mother, I will make everything public. I'll share the real reasons you opposed my relationship with Amara 6 years ago, the things you said about mixed-race children, the pressure you used to force me to leave the woman I loved when she was pregnant. Virginia's breathing got louder over the phone. You wouldn't dare, she said. The impact on our family's reputation would be what you deserve. Mother, you've spent 40 years using shame to control me. You taught me that love should depend on others' approval, that family should be about status, not affection. Reed looked toward the living room where Amara was reading to Elias. They looked so perfectly together as if they belonged. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm not afraid of what others think, and I don't need your approval. The only thing I care about is protecting those I love. Reed, please consider the risks. What we have built is based on prejudice and manipulation. If it can't withstand being associated with real love, maybe it doesn't deserve to last. Reed ended the call and quickly reached out to his lawyer to get ready for any further interference in their lives. But the real breakthrough came later that morning when Amara suggested something he had never thought of before. Instead of hiding from our critics, why not invite the public into our actual daily life? What do you mean? Reed asked. I mean, we stop hiding how we are. We show people who we are when we're just being ourselves. Amara's idea was simple but bold. They would share their family life openly, not managing their image but being transparent. They started with social media, showing their morning routines, their fun moments in the kitchen, and Reed learning to help Elias get ready for school. Then Elias had a great idea. If people think we're pretending to be a happy family, let's show them we really are one. So they did. Reed arranged for a documentary crew to capture their lives, showing not a perfect image of wealth, but the realness of love. Viewers saw Reed burning breakfast while trying to surprise Amara and Elias teaching both his parents a fun game. Most importantly, they let Elias be himself. He was a happy child who felt safe sharing his thoughts and feelings without worrying about what adults thought. The public response was strong and supportive. People began to see a genuine family, not just a negative story. Letters started arriving at their home from other families who felt encouraged by their story. Amara read one aloud. It's from a woman in Ohio whose husband adopted her daughter. She says seeing our family gave her the courage to embrace their happiness. Reed realized that he and his family had become symbols of something greater than their own experience. They showed that love could conquer challenges. Families could be chosen, not just formed by chance. Happiness was worth pursuing, even when it was difficult and public. But the real affirmation came from an unexpected source. Susan Chen, the Child Protective Services worker, called to tell them that the investigation was finished. The concerns that led to our involvement have been looked into and found to be unfounded, she said. Elias is doing well, and it seems this family setup is very good for him. What changed? Reed asked. Honestly, seeing how you live in the public eye gave us more understanding of your family than months of formal assessments could, she replied. It's clear that Elias is loved, safe, and truly happy. That's what matters to us. Reed faced a big test, not from outside pressure, but from a personal challenge that threatened their peaceful routine. It began with a call from Gerald Hartman one quiet Sunday morning while Reed, Amara, and Elias were making pancakes and planning a trip to the zoo. Reed, I have news that could change your life in ways you might not expect. Reed stepped out to a quiet terrace, leaving Amara and Elias to finish breakfast. What is it, Gerald? He asked. The board's decision to let you go has backfired badly. The company's stock has dropped 30% since your departure. 3 major clients have left, and the Singapore investors have not only pulled out, but are telling others to stay away from your company. Reed felt a strange mix of satisfaction and regret. So they're struggling without me? More than struggling. They could go bankrupt in 6 months unless they can regain investor trust. And Reed, they want you back. Reed looked over Central Park, seeing families enjoying their time together, parents pushing strollers, children feeding ducks, the simple joys that come from choosing love over work. What do they want to offer? They're offering you your position back as CEO, a better salary, complete control over the company's direction, and a public acknowledgement that removing you was a mistake. Reed's heart raced. This was everything he had worked for: control of his business, a chance to prove himself. And there's more, Gerald added. They also want to start the Amara Fields Foundation for Community Health under your company with $50 million in startup funds. Amara would be the director and you would chair the board. Reed felt the lure of the offer. He could have it all: his company, reputation, and family. Amara could expand her work in community health. Elias would have both security and loving parents. What's the catch? He asked. No catch. They are really desperate. Your change from a tough businessman to a caring family man has actually made people trust you more. Reed realized this was a major test of what he had learned about what truly mattered in life. The universe was giving him a chance for love, family, and success. I need to talk to Amara, he said. Of course, just don't take too long. They want an answer by tomorrow morning. When he returned to the kitchen, Amara and Elias were deep in a playful debate about adding chocolate chips to pancakes. Both, Elias insisted. Chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast and cookies for dessert. A boy after my own heart, Amara laughed, kissing him gently. Reed saw how joyous their connection was and worried about how his choices might complicate it. Amara, we need to talk about something important. She sensed the seriousness in his voice and her face turned concerned. Elias, why don't you go wash up while Daddy and I have a quick chat? Once they were alone, Reed revealed Gerald's offer, watching Amara's expressions shift from surprise to excitement and finally to a hint of sadness. It's everything you worked for, she said softly. But is it what we want as a family? Amara took a moment to think. Reed, 6 months ago, you chose your company over us. Now you have a chance to have both. But I need to ask you something serious. If you go back to being CEO, will you still be the person who makes pancakes on Sunday? Reed realized this was the most important question. It wasn't just if he could handle the job. It was if he could keep the personal growth that had made their family strong. I don't know, he replied honestly. I want to believe I can manage both, but I've never been good at finding a middle ground. Then maybe the question isn't about balancing both. Maybe it's about which choice you would regret more. That evening, Reed made a choice that surprised him. He called Gerald to turn down the offer, not because he didn't want success, but because he had learned to see success differently. It wasn't just about having a big company or lots of money. It was about being there for the people he loved and creating a family where everyone felt safe and valued. Are you sure, Reed? This opportunity won't come again, Gerald pressed. Am sure, Reed answered. I spent 20 years building a company that could thrive without me for a week. I won't spend the next 20 years missing my son's childhood or taking Amara for granted. After ending the call, Reed returned to the living room where Amara and Elias were building a cozy blanket fort, their laughter bringing warmth to his heart. Did you pick us again, Daddy? Elias asked, looking up from his project. I chose us, Reed confirmed, settling in to help. I will always choose us. Reed had passed a big test, choosing family over wealth, even when he could have had both. Now the challenge was to live with that choice, building a life where love was truly more meaningful than legacy. 3 months after he turned down the CEO position, Reed stood in an empty storefront that would become the Amara Fields Community Health Center. Gone were the expensive suits, now replaced by jeans and work shirts. Gone were the long work days, now focused on picking up Elias from school and enjoying family dinners. Can you help me decide where the pediatric table should go? Amara called from across the space. I think it should go here, she said, pointing to the large windows overlooking a small park. Natural light streamed in, casting a warm glow over the playground, creating a cheerful space for kids who may have felt scared. Reed admired how Amara always considered what would make others feel safer and more valued. This was very different from his old way of thinking, which was focused on profits and efficiency. Daddy, Miss Rosa taught me how to say bandage in Spanish, Elias exclaimed as he ran into the room, closely followed by Rosa Martinez, their volunteer coordinator. At just 7 years old, Elias had become a charming presence, capturing the hearts of donors with his excitement about helping sick people feel better. "That's wonderful, buddy," Reed said. "What else did you learn?" Elias replied, "That lots of kids don't have doctors like I do, and that's not fair. But Miss Rosa says we're going to help fix that." Reed was struck by how his son viewed social justice through the simple lens of kindness. While adults saw big issues, Elias saw small unfairnesses that could be corrected with compassion. "Are we still going to have enough money for ice cream and zoo trips?" Elias asked matter-of-factly. Reed knelt down to look him in the eye. "We have enough for everything that matters, buddy. We might not have a private jet, but we have each other. Our home may not be the biggest, but it has a yard where you can play." Elias nodded, adding, "And it's more fun to help people than just to buy things for ourselves." That evening, as Reed walked home from construction work, he thought about how his idea of success had changed. He now measured success by moments of family connection and community support rather than financial achievements. "Reed," Amara said as they walked together, "do you ever miss the excitement of running a big company?" "I miss the sense of accomplishment," he admitted, "but I don't miss feeling lonely or anxious, and I really don't miss the emptiness that came from achieving what I thought I wanted." He held both of their hands tightly. "Besides, I'm still solving important problems, like how to provide health care to people in need, how to be present for you and Elias, and how to love properly." "And how are you doing with those problems?" Amara asked with a smile. "Still learning, but I have great teachers," he replied. The opening day began gray and drizzly, but by 8 a.m., a line of families had formed, parents holding sleepy babies, older residents shuffling along, and teenagers bringing younger siblings for checkups they could not otherwise afford. Reed stood beside Amara at the reception desk, both wearing scrubs with a logo of a tree symbolizing community health care. His role had shifted from financial supporter to coordinator. "How can we help you today, Mrs. Chen?" Amara asked the first patient. "My grandson has been coughing for 3 weeks. His mother works 2 jobs and can't afford to take time off for doctor visits," the woman replied. Reed watched as Amara bent down to the 7-year-old's level, making him feel comforted despite the clinical environment. Throughout the morning, he was moved by the stories shared. Families struggling to afford medications and parents using home remedies for serious health issues. Children who had never received basic care because their families didn't qualify for assistance. "Mr. Reed," called Carmen Santos, their volunteer translator, "can you help with room 3? The father only speaks Spanish." Reed had been learning Spanish for this very reason. "I'll help," he said carefully. "Thank you." By lunchtime, they had helped 43 patients, given immunizations to 12 children, diagnosed 3 cases of strep throat, and connected 5 families with social services. But the most special moment came when Elias arrived after school carrying a drawing for the children's area. "I drew all of us," he announced. "That's Mommy helping sick kids. That's Daddy making sure everyone gets medicine. And that's me being a helper, too." Reed looked at the colorful drawing of stick figures with big smiles holding hands around a building with a red cross. Elias had placed himself as an important part of their mission. "He's going to grow up to be extraordinary," Dr. Patricia Valdez said, volunteering for a few hours each week. "He already is," Reed replied, watching as Elias helped a little girl play with blocks. "I'm just grateful we figured out how to support him instead of getting in his way." That evening, they tallied their first day of work. 57 people served and 3 potential emergencies avoided. They connected many families with resources they needed. "Not bad for day 1, Amara said, feeling tired but happy. "I've never felt this fulfilled," Reed admitted. "Working with spreadsheets didn't give me this sense of purpose." 6 months into this new life, Reed received an unexpected call that would challenge his transformation. "Reed, it's your mother. We need to talk." Virginia's voice was softer than usual, filled with uncertainty. "What is it, Mother?" "I've been watching the news about your community work, the health center, and the families you're helping. It's very impressive." Reed waited, knowing his mother was preparing to say something important. "I've also seen how happy Elias seems. I can hardly believe it. He is genuinely happy in ways I haven't seen in years." "Yes, Mother," Reed replied. "Hez happy and he feels loved and valued." "I can see that," she continued quietly. "Reed, I need to apologize. I was wrong about Amara, her character, and what she brings to your family. More importantly, I was wrong about what matters for a child's growth. I thought social status and financial stability were the most valuable gifts we could give Elias. But seeing him now, I realize that unconditional love and true family connections are far more important than any amount of money." Tears filled Reed's eyes. "Do you understand what you cost us? 6 years without a strong connection between you and Elias. 6 years of Amara worrying if her son was happy. 6 years of me trying to be a father without knowing how to love fully. I know, and am truly sorry. Would it be possible to meet Amara properly and show her the respect she deserves as Elias' mother?" Reed paused. "I'll talk to Amara. But if you want to be a part of our lives, it has to be unconditional. Amara is not here to win your approval. She is Elias' mother and my partner." "I understand. And Reed, I'm proud of the man and father you've become." That evening, Reed shared the conversation with Amara while they cooked dinner together. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it's often better to forgive than to hold on to resentment," Amara said. "But we must keep Elias's emotional safety our priority." They agreed to meet Virginia the following Sunday. When she arrived, she brought a gift for Elias and flowers for Amara, small, thoughtful gestures showing she was trying to change. "Grandmother," Elias exclaimed and hugged her happily. "Do you want to see the picture I drew of our family working at the health center?" Reed observed Virginia's expression as Elias excitedly shared his artwork. "Stick figures are holding hands around a building with a red cross. This is lovely, sweetheart. Can you tell me what everyone is doing? That's Mommy helping sick kids with medicine. That's Daddy making sure everyone can see a doctor. And that's me playing with little kids while their parents visit the doctor." Virginia looked closely at the drawing. "It sounds like your family does very important work together. We do. Mommy says when I grow up, I can learn to be a doctor too, or maybe a teacher. She says the most important thing is helping others feel safe and happy." "Elias," Virginia said gently, "I want to apologize for some things I said about your family before. I didn't understand how wonderful your mommy is." Elias looked at her seriously. "It's okay, Grandma. Mommy says sometimes adults make mistakes because they're scared, but that doesn't mean they are bad people. It just means they need to find better ways to show love." "Your mommy sounds very wise," Virginia said, looking at Amara with admiration. "She is. She knows how to care for people and help them feel better." The visit continued with a warm atmosphere. Virginia asked thoughtful questions about the health center, listened with interest to Amara's answers, and made no unkind comments. Most importantly, she enjoyed watching Elias interact with both parents, clearly happy about his confidence and kindness. "He's impressive," she told Reed as they were getting ready to leave. "You and Amara have given him something I didn't know how to give you, the freedom to be completely himself without worrying about disappointing adults." Reed realized his mother was recognizing mistakes about Amara and her role in raising children to feel valued just for being themselves. "It's not too late, Mother. If you want to be part of Elias' life, we're willing to help you with that. I would like that very much. I want to learn how to be the grandmother he deserves." 2 years after opening the health center, Reed found himself being interviewed for a business magazine about his change from corporate leader to community health advocate. "Mr. Mallister, do you ever miss your old job?" Looking around the busy center where Amara was helping a young mother while Elias read to her little boy, Reed replied, "I didn't lose power. I traded the power to control markets for the power to help people and strengthen communities. What I'm doing now has a bigger impact than anything I did in my corporate career. But the financial sacrifice must have been big. I earn enough to provide for my family and even save for some extra things we enjoy. We live comfortably, take vacations, and save for Elias's education, but we don't need expensive things." Reed pointed to a wall filled with children's artwork, thank you notes, and photos from community events. "This is my new idea of wealth. We are rich in connections, purpose, and knowing our work really helps people. What advice do you have for others thinking about major career changes? The question isn't whether you can afford to change. The real question is whether you can afford not to. I spent 20 years gaining wealth but losing relationships. I was successful at work but poor in my personal life. After the reporter left, Reed joined Amara for their weekly staff meeting, going over patient numbers and planning community events. We served 437 patients last month, Amara reported. That's a 12% increase from last year. Reed looked at the numbers with pride instead of stress. Growth means more families receiving care, not just more money for shareholders. Dr. Valdez talked to me about starting a residency program here, Amara continued. It would help young doctors specializing in community medicine. Reed felt that same excitement about building something meaningful. What would we need? More space, more equipment, money for resident salaries. It would double our services. How many extra families could we help? Possibly 800 to 1,000 more each month. And we'd be training doctors to see healthcare as a way to serve the community, not just as a job. Let's do it. If we can train doctors to understand that healthcare is a community responsibility, we're not just helping patients. We're changing how medicine is practiced. That evening, as Reed walked home, he thought about how their family had become a team. Elias often spent time at the center doing homework and helping with tasks. "Daddy," Elias said as they paused at a crosswalk, "Marcus says his dad makes more money than you. He says that means his family is more successful than ours." Reed knelt to talk to his son. "What do you think success means, buddy?" Elias thought for a moment. "I think success means your family loves each other and you help others when they need it. You shouldn't worry about having the most fancy things. You should care about having what really matters. And what is most important? People who are glad to see you when you get home, work that makes the world better, and enough money for ice cream sometimes." Reed laughed at his 8-year-old's wisdom about what really matters in life. Plus, Elias added, "Marcus's dad is never home for dinner and misses all the school plays. That doesn't seem very successful to me." Reed saw that his son had learned a key lesson. Being there is more valuable than just being rich. That being present is more important than wealth. That true success is measured by relationships, not profits. Reed had successfully built a new life based on love, creating a lasting change that reached beyond his family to the entire community. The final chapter showed the full bloom of this change and its lasting impact. Reed stood at the kitchen window of their simple 3-bedroom home, watching 15-year-old Elias teach neighborhood kids how to care for the community garden they had made next door. The morning sun highlighted his son's confidence as he showed planting techniques to kids who admired him. "Dad, Maria's family wants to plant tomatoes in the part you helped clear," Elias called through the window. "Tell them yes and remind them about the watering schedule." Reed marveled at how naturally his teenage son embraced their family's dedication to helping others. While other kids focused on video games, Elias spent weekends teaching younger children about healthy eating, helping older neighbors, and volunteering at the health center. "Morning, handsome," Amara said, wrapping her arms around Reed. "The coffee is ready, and I have news about the medical school partnership. Good news or tough news? Both. The university wants to make our center their main training place for family medicine students. 50 medical students each year will learn about community health care." Reed felt excited about the opportunity to grow, which would help families instead of just earning money. That's wonderful. What's the tough part? Funding. We'll need to expand, hire more doctors, and develop new programs. We're looking at a $2 million increase. Reed thought about the numbers with a careful mind, driven by different goals than when he worked in business. "The leftover investments from my corporate days," Reed said slowly. "The funds I've kept as our safety net. It's worth around $1.2 million. I want to give it all to help grow our program." Amara raised her eyebrows. "Reed, that's our entire safety net. Elias's college fund, our retirement savings, and it could mean serving 5,000 families instead of 15,000. It would allow us to train 50 caring doctors instead of creating doctors who just see this as a business." Reed held her hands gently. 10 years ago, I chose love over money for the first time. It was the best choice I've ever made. I want to make that choice again, but in a bigger way. Amara looked out at the garden where their son was teaching kids that growing food takes time and hope. What about Elias's future? College, the support most parents give. Elias's future is whatever he decides. But looking at who he is becoming, I think he would rather have parents who choose to help others than focus on safety. Parents who show him that wealth means using what you have to support the community. That evening, they called Elias for a family talk about important choices. So you want to use our money to help train doctors who will care for those who can't afford costly health care? Elias asked after thinking about it. Exactly. But it would mean no college fund, no financial safety net. Elias paused, considering this seriously. Dad, remember when I was little and asked why some kids didn't have doctors like I did? And you said that's why we started the health center. I remember this is the same idea but bigger. If we train 50 doctors each year who care more about helping people than making money, it's like opening 50 health centers across the country. But what about your future, buddy? College expenses, opportunities that money could bring. Elias shrugged, full of wisdom. You taught me that the best opportunities come from hard work and caring for others. If I want to go to college, I can find scholarships, work, and save like many people do. I'd rather be in a family that chose to help 15,000 people instead of keeping money we don't really need. That feels more like success to me. Reed felt proud of the young man he had raised, someone who understood that privilege comes with responsibility and that security means helping to strengthen the community. Are you sure? This isn't a choice we can take back. I'm sure. And Dad, I'm proud of you for choosing to help others over having money. That's the kind of father I want to be someday. 6 months later, Reed stood before the City Planning Commission, sharing the final plan for the Mallister Center for Community Medicine expansion. The room was full of families they had served, medical students who had volunteered, and community leaders who had seen the changes in their neighborhoods. This expansion means more than just new medical facilities, Reed told the commission. It represents a major change in how we train healthcare providers, moving from a profit-focused model to one that centers on community health. Dr. Patricia Valdez spoke next about the positive effects. In 10 years, the Mallister Center has achieved health outcomes that compare with the most expensive private clinics, lower emergency room visits, higher preventive care rates, and better management of long-term illnesses. But more importantly, she added, we've shown that healthcare based on relationships rather than transactions leads to better results for everyone. The commission voted to approve the expansion without hesitation. Later, Reed returned to the same hospital where this journey had begun, cutting the ribbon on the new Elias Mallister Family Support Wing, designed so no child would face health issues without their family by their side. Dr. Valdez, Reed said to his colleague and friend, thank you for helping us create spaces that support families instead of impressing donors. Thank you for knowing that healing happens in relationships as much as in medical care, she replied. Reed watched Elias, now 16, guide younger children around for checkups. His son moved through the medical environment comfortably, explaining the equipment confidently to those who had grown up seeing health care as a community service. And this is the family kitchen where parents can prepare food for their children, Elias told his small group. And the sibling playroom, so if your brother or sister is sick, you won't have to sit in dull waiting rooms. A reporter approached Reed. How does it feel to have your name on a hospital wing after stepping away from a corporate job that could have made this charity much easier? Reed thought about the different paths his life could have taken, the fortune he could have amassed, the status he could have kept. It feels like the most meaningful way to use the resources I was lucky to gather. But more importantly, it feels like a natural extension of the work our family does every day. Any regrets about the path you chose? Reed looked around at the new wing filled with families, medical staff, and community members celebrating the opening. He saw Dr. Valdez explaining family support protocols to eager residents. He saw Amara talking with social workers. He saw Elias teaching a shy 6-year-old how to use interactive displays. My only regret is that it took me so long to see what truly matters. I wish I had chosen love over status 6 years earlier. But do I regret being present for my family, building something that helps the community rather than gaining wealth, learning that love is more valuable than luxury? Absolutely not. A year after the medical school expansion opened, Reed stood in the original community health center, now the teaching hub for 50 medical residents learning about community care. The walls were filled with thank you letters in many languages, children's artwork, and photos of families whose lives had changed because of accessible health care. Elias, now 17 and set to attend college on a full scholarship for public health, was leading high school volunteers in getting ready for their annual community health fair. "Dad, Dr. Martinez wants to know if you can help with the blood pressure station," Elias called out. "Are you finally good enough in Spanish to handle intake interviews?" Reed laughed at the compliment. His language skills had greatly improved, thanks to daily interactions with families whose stories needed real communication. "Senora Morales," Reed said to the elderly woman as she settled into the screening chair. "The medicine Dr. Amara gave me has helped so much with my headaches," she said. These conversations had taught Reed more about measuring success than all his years analyzing profit margins. Success was Senora Morales playing with her grandchildren without awful headaches. Families no longer choosing between buying medicine and food. As the health fair continued around them, Reed saw Amara talking with the newest group of medical residents about approaches that focus on families. "Dr. Mallister," one of the residents said, "how did you go from corporate executive to community health advocate?" "It feels like such a big change," Amara smiled as she looked at Reed. Her eyes showed the love and pride they had shared during 10 years of building a meaningful life together. "It wasn't really a job change," Reed explained. "I learned to connect my work with my values instead of giving up my beliefs for my job. The skills I learned still apply, like planning, managing resources, and improving systems, but my motivation is completely different now." Another resident asked, "What's the biggest difference?" "In my old job, I measured success by what I could take from relationships, profits from customers, and results from workers. Now, I see success based on how much I can give to relationships, improve families' health, offer opportunities to students, and bring stability to the community." Reed looked around the busy health center. Medical students were learning that good health care goes beyond just treating individuals. They needed to look at housing, nutrition, education, and economic strength, too. The work is harder in some ways because you can't fix social issues with short-term plans, but it's much more rewarding because each day shows me that my efforts really make a difference. That evening, Reed sat in his backyard garden with Amara and their son Elias. They reflected on how far they had come, from a broken family to a strong bond that matched their personal values and professional goals. "Dad," Elias said, glancing up from the college acceptance letters he was reading, "I got into the public health program at Johns Hopkins. I have a full scholarship and a work study at their community clinic." Reed felt a swell of pride not just for the school or the scholarship, but because his son had chosen a path that would let him help others while following his own dreams. "That's great, buddy. Are you excited?" "Yes, but also a bit nervous about leaving you guys. This family, this work. It's been my whole life." Amara gently squeezed Elias's hand. "Sweetheart, we didn't build this family to keep you with us forever. We made it to give you the support to create your own meaningful life. The work will be here when you come back." Reed added, "If you want to come back, remember that wherever you go, you'll take these values with you. That's the true legacy, understanding that your life can have purpose." Elias nodded, realizing that love is about encouraging each other to grow, not just staying close. As the sun set over their neighborhood, they saw a community changed by accessible healthcare, community gardens, and proof that people could choose to serve others. Reed understood they had come full circle. The emergency room visit that made him face his past as a father had led them here. They were a family united by shared purpose, a community made stronger through teamwork, and the knowledge that choosing love over easier paths could create far-reaching positive effects. "Healing doesn't mean the hurt never existed," Reed said softly, remembering a quote that had guided their journey. "It means the hurt no longer controls us." In their garden of love, every season had brought new growth. They had planted seeds that took years to bloom and nurtured relationships through challenges. With patience, presence, and a deep commitment, they created lasting beauty in their lives.